Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my early thoughts and transfer plans ahead of Double Gameweek 25. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, as I said, in this video, you're going to get some of my early thoughts, transfer plans, and take a look at my watch list ahead of Double Game Week 25. And yes, there was, of course, the announcement just before the Game Week 24 deadline that we have a confirmed double in 25. But of course, we don't exactly know which teams will be doubling in 25 yet. So if you're still a little bit confused about which teams will be doubling and what needs to happen in order for certain teams to double in 25, I am going to cover that once more in the next section. So if you're still a little bit confused and you want me to clear that up, I'll discuss that in the next section. And of course, that's why if you look on the FPL site right now, there aren't any teams obviously definitely doubling because we need to wait for the EFL Cup semi-final games coming next week. So we will cover that in the next section. But first, before we do that and look at my team, let's actually briefly review Game Week 24. And of course, this is still ongoing. I'm actually recording this at half-time during the Arsenal-Man City game. The reason for that, firstly, you guys love when you have the video ready for you as soon as the football ends. Finish the football, switch over to YouTube, and make sure to subscribe. But also because I only own Gabriel from that game, and what happens in the second half shouldn't massively affect my transfer plans unless, and hopefully this doesn't happen, Gabriel picked up an injury. But other than that, nothing's going to massively change my plans because I don't really plan on buying any Arsenal or City players. And believe it or not, I'm on a massive green arrow, and I wasn't expecting it. At the start of the game week, I didn't love the look of my team, but I'm currently on 104 points, obviously with Trent, Salah, Pickford still to play their second game, Palmer still to play, and also Arne Slot to have his second game against Everton as well. And that's enough for a green arrow from 180k to 88k. That is my first time this season inside the top 100k, which I'm absolutely delighted about. So let's just briefly go through who managed to get me there. So obviously starting with the first game of the game week, Chris Wood hat-trick, 7-0 Forest. No one saw that coming. Like, some people might have thought Chris Wood might do quite well. A hat-trick and 7-0. Forest just got beat 5-0 by Bournemouth. So what does that mean? Would Bournemouth beat Brighton 12-0 right now? I mean, it's an absolute joke, that fixture and that result. I didn't expect it. In fact, a lot, if not all, apart from one possible transfer plan, involved me selling Chris Wood this week. Apart from just doing Bruno to Mbeumo, which I actually ended up doing, I was very tempted to sell Wood for Wissa. I was tempted to downgrade Wood all the way to allow me to upgrade Enzo. If you remember watching my team selection video, so many transfer plans involved selling Chris Wood. And in fact, one of my favourites involved selling Wood and Mateta this week. That just goes to show how much luck there is in FPL. If certain things had aligned themselves slightly differently, if the Double Game Week 25 announcement hadn't happened, I may well have sold the pair of Chris Wood and Mateta. So yes, there is a lot of luck in FPL, and I'm very glad I didn't. But yeah, Chris Wood getting me 17 points was fantastic. In terms of the Liverpool and Everton games, obviously clean sheets for both teams, which meant I got a 9-pointer for Pickford, who got an assist in the 11th second of the game, which is just brilliant. Obviously, that makes me very happy. I sold Alisson to buy Pickford, who also got 9 points, but that allowed me to get Arne Slot in. So I'm glad, at least in the first game, that Pickford managed to match Alisson. Trent obviously got the clean sheet as well, and that meant that Slot got 10 points. And I think this week, if you've triple captained, by the way, brilliant choice. But if you play the assistant managership on Slot or Moyes, you're in a really good position. Moyes has already picked up 12 points. So even if Everton lose to Liverpool, let's say they get 1 or 2 goals, it's like 13 or 14 points from David Moyes. That's great. Arne Slot, I would hope, will beat Everton. Liverpool will beat Everton, which means we could be looking at sort of 18 to 20 points from this game week. Again, it shows how valuable and powerful this chip can be. But I think if you played any chips this week, most people are in a pretty good position as a result. So yeah, the Liverpool and Everton games went pretty well for me. Gakpo only getting an assist was nice because Gakpo is a major rank threat for me. Like, every time he does anything, it really damages the rank. But those were a good set of games for me. Some of the more disappointing players, obviously Isak with another blank. There will be potential to sell Isak coming up. The fixtures aren't great. He does probably blank in Game Week 29. So we will discuss that possibility in coming game weeks. But he was also very unlucky. He hit the crossbar. He had a couple of chances. He could have very easily returned. Honestly, Morgan Rogers is probably the biggest disappointment for me. That's 3 1-pointers in a row. After getting a bloody hat-trick in the Champions League, he comes in with a 1-pointer. He loves a booking. Rogers is now on 8 yellow cards. You know, he reaches 10 yellow cards before they play 32 games, Villa. He gets a 2-game suspension, and he's probably going to blank in Game Week 29. So Rogers, whilst he might not actually be an awful buy for 25 if Villa double, he's then probably not a bad sell from Game Week 26 onwards. I just can't see myself holding Rogers for much longer. He's very disappointing, and the Bournemouth mids look really, really good. Mbeumo did blank, but so did Bruno Fernandes, and he got 1 point and he got a yellow card. So I sold Bruno for Mbeumo, didn't gain any points this week, but I'm much happier moving forward having Mbeumo in my team than Bruno Fernandes. And then I'll finish with, obviously, the biggest conflict of the game week. I'm a Manchester United fan that gained 24 points from Munoz and Mateta. In terms of overall effective ownership at my rank, comfortably my two biggest differentials are Mateta and Munoz. In fact, I don't actually have many other massive differentials apart from the two Palace boys. And I just know how bad Man United are. And sometimes this can work to your favour. Lots of people were benching Munoz this week or selling Mateta. I did obviously consider selling Mateta, but I just knew if I had them, I'd definitely start them because Man United are awful. And Man United really should have scored. I think Munoz, Henderson owners are quite lucky to get the clean sheet. Mateta's a monster. A little bit of luck, obviously, with the first goal, it rebounding off the crossbar to him. But overall, to get 24 points from two differentials was massive. And that is probably single-handedly the reason I got the green arrow, right? It's just the two Crystal Palace players. So this just goes to show the luck in FPL again. I wasn't really expecting that much from them. I wasn't expecting a hat-trick from Chris Wood. But the team has delivered. So as of right now, after the first half of the Arsenal-Man City game, I'm currently on 104 points. Let's see if Gabriel can get a goal or a clean sheet in the second half, which I'm probably doubting for both. And then we'll see what happens for Liverpool versus Everton, which isn't for like another 10 days or so. So that's Game Week 24. Let me know how many points you got in Game Week 24 down below in the comments. Let's now take a look at Double Game Week 25 and what needs to happen for it to be a double for certain teams. So guys, before we take a look at my team for Game Week 25 and also my watch list and transfer plans, let's discuss Double Game Week 25. So if you've not yet seen, maybe you've just not been paying much attention, there was a Double Game Week 25 announcement just before the Game Week 24 deadline, and it is confirmed. So we definitely will have a Double Game Week, but we don't yet know exactly which teams will be doubling because it is dependent on what happens in the EFL Cup semi-finals. So I thought I'd just briefly address it here just to give you some sort of clarity around what we expect to happen, but also what to keep an eye on in the EFL Cup semi-finals. So just to recap exactly why this is a double, Game Week 29 is the same weekend as the EFL Cup final. So the two teams that reach the EFL Cup final and the teams that they would play against in Game Week 29 will blank in 29. We originally thought that those games that blanks in 29 would be rescheduled for Game Week 33, but instead the Premier League have provisionally announced that whichever teams are going to double, that will be moved into Game Week 25. So we will definitely have a double, we just don't know for how many teams and which teams exactly. So to go through that, if Liverpool reach the EFL Cup final, and remember that Spurs won the first leg 1-0, so they do have to overturn that 1-0 deficit. So if Liverpool reach the EFL Cup final, both Liverpool and Villa will have a double game week. For Liverpool, that will be Wolves and Villa, and then for Villa, it will be Ipswich and Liverpool. So they've both already got really good games against Wolves at home and Ipswich at home, and then you just add in the extra game against each other. At the moment, Liverpool have a 70.5% chance, according to the bookies, of reaching the EFL Cup final. So through this video, there will be a bit of an assumption that Liverpool do reach the final, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. Spurs pick up a win today, looking a little bit better maybe. Spurs could definitely reach the final, right? But at the moment, the bookies still have that as being quite unlikely. So, if Liverpool don't reach the final, then Spurs obviously will. So if Spurs reach the final, that will cause a double game week for for Spurs and Fulham. So Spurs would have a double of Manchester United at home and Fulham away, and Fulham would have a double of Forest at home and Spurs at home. So both of them okay doubles, nowhere near as good as obviously the Liverpool and Villa ones because obviously Villa and Liverpool already have a really good solid game in game week 25. At the moment, the bookies have that at a 29.5% chance. So, what this essentially means is one pairing of Liverpool and Villa, or Spurs and Fulham, will have a double in Game Week 25 confirmed, and it can only be one of them, right? So all four teams obviously can't double, it will just be one of those two pairings. What this means is if, like me, you're sat there with Rodgers and Robinson, for example, one of Rodgers or Robinson will double in Game Week 25. If you're sat there with Son and Salah, one of those two will double in Game Week 25. So look right now, and if you've got Villa or Fulham players, or Spurs players, or Liverpool, you're definitely not selling them yet ahead of the Game Week 25, unless, obviously, we get more information from the EFL Cup games, which are played, I believe, on Wednesday and Thursday next week. So that's sort of that first semi-final. In terms of the second semi-final between Arsenal and Newcastle, if Arsenal reach the EFL Cup final, which is looking quite unlikely because they lost the first leg 2-0 to Newcastle, and they have to now go to St James's Park and overturn that. But if they do reach the final, then both Arsenal and Chelsea will double in 25. So again, just until we find that out, don't be going and selling your Arsenal and Chelsea players. So for Arsenal, that would be Leicester away and Chelsea at home. And for Chelsea, that would be Brighton away and Arsenal away. So not overly brilliant doubles, but you would definitely not mind having their assets in that week. A double game week is a double game week. At the moment, that is only a 14.4% chance, though. So it seems very unlikely that Arsenal will reach the EFL Cup final. If you're wondering what happens if Newcastle reach the final, without getting into the technicalities too much, because Newcastle and Palace aren't in Europe, there is less chance of fixture congestion later in the season. So there's not been a provisional announcement if Newcastle reach the final that there will be a double in 25. So we are anticipating that if Newcastle reach the final, that double for Newcastle and Palace will still happen in double game week 33. Hopefully that's all clear. It does get a little bit complicated when I'm saying it out loud. In my head, it's very clear, but sometimes it's difficult to explain. What the projections are, therefore, at the moment, is that there will be a double game week in 25 for only Liverpool and Villa. That could technically also then include Arsenal and Chelsea, or it could be Spurs, Fulham, Arsenal, Chelsea, or just Spurs and Fulham. We don't yet know that, so all eyes are on the EFL Cup semi-final games next week. Hopefully that is all clear. If you need me to clear anything up, please let me know down below in the comments. But I'm going to go off on the basis right now that there is a probable double game week for Liverpool and Villa, but also keep in mind that if I have someone like Anthony Robinson, you never know, he could get a cheeky double game week. So then moving on to my team for double game week 25 and also my watch list and transfer plans as well. Because we don't know the EFL Cup semi-final results, a lot of this is just hypothesizing, but just to give you some entertainment and also to talk through the possibilities as well and where I can see my team going. So I've got 0.2 million in the bank and 2 free transfers. So not much money to sort of spread around the team, but because I have the 2 free transfers, it opens up the ability to downgrade a player and upgrade elsewhere. So I do have a little bit of flexibility, but it will depend on what happens, obviously, in the second game of Game Week 24, any injury updates to players like Trent, and also, do I end up needing to sell and transfer out Arne Slot, which I'll discuss. So as a result of what I've just discussed in the previous section, right now, I've got in sort of italics the second fixture in double game week 25. So I've got a penciled in double for Liverpool and Villa. But as I said, as per before, it could also be instead a double for Anthony Robinson instead. So let's go through each of the players and if they have any chance of leaving and where I could see the team going moving forward. So starting with the goalkeepers, obviously Fabianski we still believe has lost his place. I've not seen the Monday night game, but Pickford now will see me through until at least game week 30. He's got a decent set of fixtures over the next 5. He plays against West Ham at home in blank game week 29. So he's confirmed to have a fixture and it's a good fixture as well. So I'm very happy to have Jordan Pickford in. The very earliest that I'll sell him is potentially if I wildcard in game week 30, because from game week 30 onwards, Everton do not have a good set of fixtures. But keepers wise, I'm very happy. In terms of the defence, really happy again. Gabriel's got Leicester, which is great. I believe he's just conceded to Haaland, so he's not got the clean sheet in game 24, but that's fine. Leicester and West Ham are good games, so he will be fine for now. I could foresee myself selling him after that, though. The fixtures aren't perfect. He does cost a lot of money, so we will see what happens there, but I'm very happy having him for game week 25. And honestly, Munoz and Robinson, even if Robinson doesn't get the double, Everton at home, Forest at home, that's already a bit of a benching headache for me. At the moment, I've got Munoz. I had Munoz in even before his assisting clean sheet. He's just got a little bit more attacking threat for me. And I know Robinson got another assist, by the way, in Game Week 24. But overall, Munoz is just a little bit closer to goal. And I think Everton are a slightly weaker team than Forest. That being said, from like an attacking perspective, of course, they are looking very good under Moyes. So Munoz versus Robinson will be close. Of course, like I said, if Robinson gets the double, absolutely he'll be starting for me instead. So with the defence, I'm actually pretty happy. The only concern is obviously the Trent injury. So I don't have like a really definitive update at the moment. Apparently, Trent requested to come off. He was clutching his hamstring. And if it is a hamstring issue, he probably doesn't play the second game in 24. And therefore, obviously, he would be a bit of a doubt for 25. If there are any serious doubts around Trent, I've got 2 possibilities. If Liverpool do get the double in 25, I'll probably move Trent to Konate or Van Dijk, and I'll discuss that in a bit more detail in a second, but that would be the play, because I'd still want a Liverpool defensive asset, and I'd still want 2 Liverpool plus Arne Slot. So if they do get that double, I will probably sell Trent for a Konate or Van Dijk, only, of course, if Trent is a major doubt. If they don't double, well, then that will mean that Fulham are doubling and also Spurs as well. So I have the option to go there if I want to, or instead to a Bournemouth defender. So a Kirkes, a Howson, they might be a better shout even without the double game week. So there are lots of possibilities in where I might go with that spot there. But let's for now just say that Trent will be fine and just fingers crossed, pray that he will be. Then moving on to the midfield, I don't foresee myself making a transfer at least to the 4 that are starting right now, which is Rodgers, Mbeumo, Palmer, Salah. Even if Salah doesn't have the double, he's fine. If he does, obviously fantastic. It's another good opportunity to captain him. Palmer, absolutely fine having. He's not been returning as often. We'll see how he gets on Monday night, but I'm still very happy to have him. No plans to sell him when in a couple of weeks he plays Southampton at home and Leicester at home. So Palmer, absolutely fine. And then Mbeumo, just brought him in. I'm very happy to have him for West Ham, Leicester, Everton, Villa. He's got a blank game week 29. He's just a season keeper for me, unless I end up needing to desperately free up money or unless there's a massive drop-off from him, like we saw potentially at points earlier on in this season. But for now, Mbeumo was a player that I wanted to bring in and just keep. Rodgers has been really disappointing, but even if he doesn't have the double, he's got Ipswich at home. And if he does have the double, it's just an additional fixture for him. So I can't foresee myself selling Rodgers this week. But after that, he's got Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Brentford. And then if, obviously, Liverpool reach the EFL Cup final, he'll have a blank game week in game week 29. So I could see myself definitely after game week 25 moving Rodgers on, but that doesn't feel like a necessity for me right now. The only player that I really want to sell in my midfield is Enzo, and that's been the case for a while. The issue is he's so cheap that I can't really get anywhere. At the moment, I have exactly the money to go from Enzo to Dango Ouattara, but I've just taken a look and he is right on the cusp of changing in price tonight. So even if Dango Ouattara doesn't go up in price tonight, he's probably going to go up in price tomorrow. And as a result, I'm just going to be priced out because I'm not going to make a transfer before the EFL Cup semi-finals. I think that would be absolutely madness when we just don't know which teams are going to double and blank coming up. It's such a... I'm not going to say silly, actually. I was going to say silly, but it's completely up to you how you play the game. I think for me, with the knowledge that I have of what might happen this week, I think it's silly to make a transfer before then. So I would advise you hold your transfers until the EFL Cup semi-final games. And so basically, I'm going to be priced out of Enzo to Ouattara. And therefore, I can't really go anywhere, particularly with that Enzo position, unless I downgrade. So all of my upgrades to Enzo do depend on me downgrading players like Wood, Mateta, who are doing so well for me. Obviously, if I end up selling Trent to Konate or Van Dijk, that might be a blessing in disguise because it would free up the funds to make that change. I suppose, though, that would then cause me a benching headache. If I bring in a Bournemouth mid this week for Southampton, who am I benching? It is probably Mateta or Wood, the two players that have just got me 30 points and 5 goals combined. So it is a difficult position to be in terms of what I do with that Enzo spot. On the front three, I could conceivably sit here right now and list 5 or 6 reasons for each player that you might want to sell them. Some of them don't have the fixtures right now. Chris Wood, Fulham, Newcastle, Arsenal, City. It's not a nice run of fixtures. Isak, same, not a very nice run of fixtures. Isak also is likely to blank in game week 29, right? So he's got a difficult run, then a possible blank, and he's very expensive. Mateta also probably blanks in game week 29. But then before that, I don't really want to desperately sell him, but he's also the one player in my team that is at that dodgy price point where it's like, yeah, you know what, I could go Mateta down to a cheaper forward and that would free up the funds. He's always that tempting player to sell because of the price point that he's at. So I could see myself keeping all 3 or selling 1 or 2 of them to free up the funds to make some moves elsewhere. But I'm also so happy with them. All 3 of them are on penalties. All 3 of them are talismanic. And especially with Wood and Mateta, you might view this as being lucky, but they are tap-in merchants half the time. And I love that. I don't want my striker to be doing what João Pedro is, which is playing left-back. Right? I like that when I watch Chris Wood and Mateta, they are literally stood there half the time, just waiting for a tap-in. It's great. It's what I want. They're good in the air, on penalties, good for minutes. They're just so consistent and so reliable for me. So it's very difficult to look to sell them. But again, when I look at trying to free up funds, it's one of the more obvious places to do so. So I guess that's the team for right now. Not much more else to say on them as things stand because it does really depend what happens. I suppose I should discuss Arne Slot. So that the idea for going for Arne Slot in game week 24 was if Liverpool double in 25, which again is about a 70% possibility, I would keep the assistant manager on Arne Slot. So if Liverpool do get the double of Wolves and Villa, I will keep the assistant manager on Arne Slot. So I won't need to use a transfer. However, if Liverpool don't reach the final, that will mean a double for Spurs and Fulham. And therefore, I will use one of my 2 free transfers, selling Slot to Silva or to Postecoglou. That would not be ideal because the whole point for going for Slot rather than Moyes in the first place was largely it saves you a transfer and you get a double-double for Slot. So I'll see how that goes. Again, there is so much dependent on these EFL Cup games. But as of right now, the plan would be to keep Slot and not use a transfer there. And therefore, I would have 2 free transfers to use for my actual players in my team. So let's now take a look at my watch list and look at the possible combination of players that I could bring into my team this week. So guys, then just taking a brief look at my watch list for Game Week 25, I've basically separated this into 3 columns, which is if Liverpool and Villa double, who will I be looking at? If Tottenham and Fulham double, who will I be looking at? And I've put sort of other players excluding the doubles, i.e. they don't have a double, they can't have a double, but I'm also very interested still in potentially bringing them in. I've not also got a column for if Arsenal and Chelsea double, firstly because I only have so much space on the screen, but also because it's at a 15% chance. So I'll leave it there for now. But obviously if Arsenal, and by the way, I think they're winning 3-1 now in the game. I'm recording this during the Arsenal City game. Then if they do end up overturning that deficit against Newcastle, well, then we'll have a completely different conversation about potentially bringing in Arsenal and Chelsea assets. But for now, let's go through it. I will just note, this is going to be tricky because these teams that double in 25 are going to be the ones that blank in 29. So unless you are committing to a free hit in 29, you're bringing in players that you're then going to have to sell again anyway. So you have to be very careful. Again, if you're not committing to a free hit in 29, you can't bring in too many of these players because it will get to a point where you're then struggling to field 11 for Game Week 29. So all of these things to consider. But basically, obviously, if Liverpool and Villa double, I'm looking at Liverpool and Villa players. Obviously, Konate and Van Dijk are here because if Trent's injured, I'd have to go there. If Trent's not injured, well, I've got Slot, Trent and Salah already. So I can't bring in any further Liverpool assets. That's why someone like Gakpo, Diaz, Szoboszlai aren't on this list here. In terms of Villa, I was looking through their assets. Obviously, I've already got Morgan Rogers. Ollie Watkins is a bit of an injury doubt, but I would be very tempted by something like Isak to Watkins. I know that sounds crazy, but just to attack that double game week, 2 home fixtures. But if he's a doubt at all, it obviously looked like he pulled up with a groin injury. Maybe we don't go there. You do have other attackers, right? Donyell Marlon, if Watkins is out a little bit longer term, he's probably going to get good minutes. It might mean an increase in minutes for Bailey. And that man, Marcus Rashford, I don't know if it's been like 100% announced, but everyone has basically reported it as confirmed. If Rashford comes in and impresses in the next week, and let's say Watkins is out a little bit, then I think Marcus Rashford becomes an option. If Ollie Watkins is fit, I won't go for someone like Marcus Rashford because I actually think Jacob Ramsey's been playing quite well. He loves John McGinn and Rodgers obviously has to play as well. So it's McGinn, Rodgers and Ramsey with Watkins in front of them. So I'm not saying that Rashford won't get minutes, but I just can't confirm that he comes straight in and starts. The only way I'd even slightly look at Rashford is if Watkins was confirmed out for a little while. But let's assess what happens with Villa. In terms of the defenders, the player that I would want is Luca Dean, but he's had 2 45-minute games in the last 3 or 4. He does get these random early subs and he doesn't start every game for Villa. So I just feel like that creates a headache. So basically, if I was going to go for a Villa defender, I'd go super boring all the way down to 4.4 Konsa. But again, that is extremely boring and not necessarily something that I think is a great use of my transfer. So I essentially think, as boring as this is, if Liverpool and Villa double, probably the only move I'd be considering is selling Trent if he's injured. Otherwise, I probably won't bring in any further doublers. If Spurs and Fulham double, I think it's a slightly different story. There are some interesting assets. So from Spurs, it wouldn't be a defender. I know they've just kept a clean sheet, but I don't trust their defence. So it'd be Son, Richarlison or Kulusevski. It's probably Kulusevski just for the price and position. Like, I don't want to bring in Richarlison because I like my forwards. I don't want to bring in Son because he's so expensive. Although if I could, obviously Son could be a great option. And maybe I'll look at trying to rejig funds around. But Kulusevski looks like the easiest Spurs player to go and get. It would ideally have to be for Enzo. So then maybe something like Trent down to Konate and Enzo to Kulusevski could be a move that I consider. The only thing is, I probably won't get Konate, obviously, if Kulu doubles. But Trent down, basically, is an option if he's injured, and then Kulu in for Enzo. I've considered that sort of path. And then the only other player is Raul Jimenez. I could double up, conceivably, on the Fulham defence, like go and get a Castagna or an Anderson. But I'm happy enough just having Robinson for the double, if they double. So Raul would be the only one I'd really consider. But again, do I desperately want to sell any of my forwards? Not right now. It's a little bit uninspiring, the double, but at the same time, I don't want to not attack it just because the assets aren't perfect. Like we know in double game weeks, Beto's not a great asset, but he goes out there and gets a brace, and now he's got a second fixture as well. So it is fun attacking the double. So I will definitely consider some of these assets. I am really more interested, though, in the players that don't double. So you can see the man on the thumbnail, Kluivert. 5.8 million is such a cheap price for a penalty taker, playing really well. And that Bournemouth team created almost 2 XG in that game against Liverpool. Liverpool really should have conceded at least 1 in that game. So we're very lucky to get the clean sheet for Slot and also for the players as well. But I also really do like Semenyo and Dango Ouattara as well. I think those 3, it reminds me of Brighton back in the day when we had McAllister, March and Matoma as well. But I really like those 3 Bournemouth players. I think I am leaning Kluivert at the moment because his minutes look really good at the moment. Takes some set pieces and also on penalties. And penalties are massive. I know Bournemouth have had a ridiculous number of penalties this season. I don't expect it to continue at that rate, but I just always prefer extra routes to points. I really like the idea of targeting this fixture against Southampton for Bournemouth. So I'm still really, really considering trying to get a Bournemouth asset and maybe ignoring doublers as a result, especially because they have that great fixture in Game Week 29 against Brentford at home as well. So Bournemouth assets just feel so good to bring in. I also like Ahmad though. And I've just sold Bruno Fernandes, and I know Manchester United aren't playing very well, but I love the fixtures for Man United. So I feel like Ahmad could be a good route for me, considering I've just sold Bruno. If I can get Enzo to Ahmad, maybe going for Ahmad and ignoring the Bournemouth Bournemouth midfielders could be a slightly differential play. That's something to consider. But yeah, I've still got my eye on Ahmad around that kind of price. And then in terms of the forwards, I've got Wissa and Cunha on here. I still think that Brentford are worth attacking. Wissa had another big chance he missed, obviously, in game week 24. He's a big chance magnet. And with those fixtures, I expect goals for him. And Cunha continues to look brilliant. His attitude stinks. And when I watch him at the moment, it doesn't make me want to own him because I'm just like, just improve your bloody attitude. But he's just signed a new contract with Wolves. He's on penalties. The minutes are great, set pieces. If Wolves get anything, you usually do expect Cunha to be involved. And he's so good for minutes. He scored a goal in like the 96th minute against Villa because he's always on the pitch right till the end. So these are the players that I'm considering right now. In terms of what I think is likely, maybe what I'll do is just go back to my team just that you can see my team. Ideally, I don't use a transfer on Arna slot, but I've got that penciled in as a possibility. I'm looking at Trent in my team. If there are any doubts, it might give me the funds that I need to make any other moves in my team. So maybe Trent down to either a Liverpool defender or whoever else doubles is a possibility. And then in an ideal world, Enzo needs to get improved. If I can get Enzo to a Bournemouth midfielder or Ahmad, I then look at my team and I'm really, really happy with it. If though, worst case scenario, I can't get Enzo up, I could just keep the team as it is and then sell Rodgers next week for a Bournemouth mid or for Ahmad. So essentially keeping Enzo for now as my cheap 8th attacker that I basically never play and upgrade Rodgers that way. So those are some of the possibilities. I'm going to leave it there because, again, I'm just hypothesizing so much based on the EFL Cup games. But I just wanted to give you my early thoughts around my team. Let me know what you do with my team and let me know what your plans are as well. So, guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 25 early thoughts and transfer plans as well. As I said, keep an eye on those EFL Cup semi-final games and we'll have some videos maybe later next week, maybe going into the week after. Have a little bit of break from FPL and just wait. Get the results and then start strategizing. Hopefully you did enjoy it. And if you did, please do smash that like button. Make sure to subscribe as well. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.